Less than 2 years ago, an Austrian serial entrepreneur started a new VC fund called Capital300. His previous own ventures were financed by the most prestigious US VCs. Around 15 years ago, or maybe a bit less, he was posting video content on YouTube. I think most of us didn't realize that content marketing is important. He was already doing that. A few years later, that company was acquired for more than 200 million USD. How to scale your startup? What is history and lessons learned? Please welcome on stage Roman Scharf. Please, Roman, come on stage. Can we maybe start with Jajah and then Talent House about scaling? So the topic here is how to scale, what you learned during these 10, 15 years, and what would be your advice to the CE startups?
Okay, sure. So thanks for inviting me. When I talk about Jajah and how it scaled to 100 million users and all that, I'm always have to remind myself and others that this was my third startup, and I had already, a collection of mistakes when I got there. The one before was a software company that I started in Austria, and I thought of the market as Austria, Germany. I saw Benelux on the horizon as a later market. And it was a successful company, and it got sold to a public acquirer. But when we started Jajah, something changed in the mind. We knew it's global. We knew it's global from the day we started it, and we never thought about a German market or an Austrian market. And I think this is true for most of the big things. The people who started Spotify never thought of it as a Swedish music service. The people behind UiPath, if you ask the founder, Danny, he would never say that he had Romania in mind when he started his company there. TransferWise in Estonia, they built a global service. So growth starts in the mind. It starts when you start. And I see this a lot, and I think it makes a difference from the beginning. And then it's a lot of, just the regular stuff. To have to recruit well, you have to make the right product decisions that set you up for a global market. You have to choose the right partners, also venture capitalists, to set you up for a global market. And you have to deliver on a promise. I mean, not every idea is suited for a global market. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurial energy and talent gets wasted because people don't let go of the initial idea. And I think there's room for improvement, because it doesn't mean that you're not a great founder or a great CEO if your first idea doesn't fly. A lot of pivots have become successful companies when people scraped their initial tool or service or whatever they built and started something new. And as I think that, together with the ambition to build something global, is the first step.
But have you started like that? So if there are local startups here and they think that if they enter the Austrian market, they are kind of international. So should we start from scratch?
That's a good example. So
global.
nobody who founds here in Hungary or in Romania or anywhere in the region should think of Austria as a market. Austria is not a market. The local market is Europe, and Europe is still not the world. If someone talks to me about Austria as a market, I usually don't spend a lot of time.
Okay. Going to Jajah, which you started in the US. So
we started in 2005 in Vienna, but only a few months later, Sequoia Capital called us out of the blue. My phone rang, and that was a US number. They had my phone number from the domain registry, because we didn't have phone numbers on our website. And 21 days after that phone call, we were a Delaware company, and we had $3 million. And I was traveling with my suitcase to the US, and I stayed for 10 years in the Valley, and it was great. But it still started in Europe.
How did it all started? I mean, reaching that 100 million users. So was it like this easy hockey stick, or there were, as you said, pivoting product decisions?
It was a pivot. So the first product was just a plain Skype competitor. And the idea just was to be better than Skype, but we did what Skype did. We were cooler. We had graffiti artists design our interface, and we had some nice features. Foremost, we had from our CTO, we had a voice compression software technology that needed only 20% of the bandwidth over the IP and only 15% of the CPU load on the machine to communicate voice properly. That again was a byproduct of someone trying to make a great video conferencing tool, which is still something that the world has not completely solved. The tricky part with video is always the voice, because a frozen image doesn't create problems, but a frozen audio creates a lot of problems. So out of this voice codec technology, we built a Skype competitor, software download, and so on. And talking to the users, the most common feedback was, it's not about the nice design, it's not about that it's faster, it's just as hard to install and to get it to run on the machine. You know, you had to do a download, you had to do an installation process, you had to eventually adjust your firewall settings. If you had Norton or something like that on your system, or McAfee, then you would have to make some adjustments for Skype, for our software, and for everything. And 6 months before Sequoia called us, we decided to go a different route. And we decided to do voice over IP from phone to phone. And basically you go on an interface like Google, you put a number in you want to call, boom, your phone rings, connects you to that number. And this product innovation triggered the growth triggered the call triggered the money together with the right hiring decisions that we have done thanks to the investors, because we didn't know many people in Silicon Valley, and they helped us recruit a global superstar team that led to growth.
Okay, we have here a question, what you can see on the screen. You said to choose the right VC. Can you share?
That's a very good question. I think generally speaking, people are not demanding enough when they choose their VC. And I know that the immediate reaction in many heads is, well, but I just need the money, right? That's a common misunderstanding. You need the right VC, you don't need the money. The money is a byproduct. If you choose the right VC, then they will do so much more than just give you money. If you happen to have something that, you know, doesn't appeal to investors and doesn't really lend for bootstrapping, then you need to reconsider. If you only have one choice, you cannot get a great VC. You should have something where you have choice, and then you need to have someone that you like to be with. You need to have someone you want to be in a room with. You need to have someone who can add to your decision-making qualities by bringing additional traits. You need someone to open a network for you. Like for me, Sequoia was, and still is, the absolute Yeti masters of venture capital. I don't know if everybody's familiar. Sequoia Capital was founded 40 years ago by Don Valentine, who we became wealthy as a manager for a national semiconductor. And when he had so much money from his retirement and he didn't want to do nothing, he decided that he would make investments. And driving down the valley, he found a funny place where a lot of adults were queuing to do something on a regular afternoon. He didn't know what it was, so he parked the car, he went to the front of the line, and there was the first Atari box. And he saw that people actually throwing money into that box to play a game, and 50 people behind the first one were queuing for their turn. So he went to the guy who founded Atari, and he became his investor. And then Steve Jobs became the quality manager of Atari, and when he needed money, he went to Don, and Don funded Apple with the first check. And this story continues over 40 years. They've founded a lot of most amazing startups in the history. Today, I think their market cap of their portfolio is 28% of NASDAQ. So 1 in 4 NASDAQ companies are Sequoia companies. That's a global powerhouse. They choose carefully, but when they go in, like my experience was, they called us 4 days later on a Sunday. They came to Vienna. They just came. 3 of them came into Vienna. We spent from 2 p.m. until 2 a.m. with them, and it was clear that we're going to do a deal, although we had a term sheet from a London-based VC. And from there, it went really fast. Term sheet a few days later, quick due diligence. The lawyer set up a Delaware company. The money came into the bank account before the bank account was ready to take money, so it bounced back. Became a running joke in the Sequoia offices for the last 15 years. Every time I go there, I have to. Someone is telling me that joke. Then I really know very well. So anyway, and then we moved into Palo Alto. We got space in there. There's a second building they had just for new startups to be close. And literally every day, someone from their team or someone from their network came to sit down and help us. They didn't charge. They didn't ask questions other than how can we help. And there was the best lawyers, the salespeople, marketing people. Someone said, "Oh, this is great for Yahoo. Let's do a meeting at Yahoo." So someone picked up the phone, called an SVP at Yahoo. "Oh, tomorrow 3 p.m. Okay, great, we'll be there." And boom, we had like the most amazing road deal flow just overnight. It became a B2B tool. A lot of people wanted to use our technology. It got integrated in Yahoo Messenger and Microsoft Messenger and other things. That was, thanks to their network. And they really pulled up their sleeves and they participated in product meetings. They gave us PR resources. Suddenly, everybody was talking about the business. We got featured on television, American morning show. You cannot get there unless you have, a VC that makes you famous just by putting their money in.
If I come back to the right VC, so when you met in Vienna, because they flew here, when you met these Sequoia team, so when you said that, okay, I felt that, or somehow you felt that they are the right partners for you, what does that mean? So because they were nice, because they were clever, because they have a long phone book, so what does that mean?
They were actually annoying.
In your case?
So let me tell you how it started, because it was very annoying. So, we were European trained. And when we got the people in the building, the first thing was we presented an NDA, because that's what our lawyer told us to do with all the other investors that we've met. And Sequoia categorically ruled out, we do not sign NDAs. And one of the three was Mike Moritz, and I asked him, why do you not sign NDAs? How can we tell you everything about our baby, our technology, our plan, if we are not protected? And he says, well, you just have to trust me, I guess. I'm on Yahoo boards on Tuesday, and I'm on Google boards on Thursday. They do trust me. Maybe you should trust me. And I'm like, okay, this is a fair point. So next, we presented our business plan. It was a phone book size business plan. It had everything you learn at a great university about how to make a business plan. Categorically, we don't read business plans, right? So I said, so what are we going to do? And they say, well, just start by telling us who you are, what you do, and where you want to go. And this is when it clicked. Suddenly I realized these are completely different people than all the other people. And from there it was, I don't know, it just clicked. And it also helped that, before the meeting, I looked them up and had a book about inside Silicon Valley. And when you go for the index page and you look for Sequoia, it basically says page 17, 19, 21, 25, 31, 34. That helped a bit as well, because it caught my attention. But the fact that they completely approached it differently, I think was the most memorable point, where it kind of went from this is just a random VC to this is the perfect VC for me.
You mentioned that when you have a lot of meetings with Yahoo, etc., there are ideas popping up. We could use your technology to that, etc., etc. This happens a lot to startups that they need, I don't know, maybe just advisors or investors or corporates saying that, okay, we like it, maybe can you do some small modifications? So, and sometimes it's confusing, okay, which way to go, whether to choose this or that and that, and startups have very likely limited resources, developer, cash, etc., etc. So how did that happen with you? Because you had maybe every week a new meeting and a new idea how to further develop the technology and the product. So how to choose the right way?
Well, first of all, we were lucky. After Sequoia, I convinced a friend of mine, Jajah, the founder of ICQ, to become a board member and also an angel investor. And he helped us set up an amazing tech team in Tel Aviv, in Herzliya outside Tel Aviv. The reason for that was simple. We came to the US and we realized these guys have no idea about telephony. I mean, no idea about telephony. But with our own tech team that was based in Vienna, we saw that they're not cutting edge on the web side of things. And in Israel, we found the perfect combination of web knowledge and telephony knowledge. So in no time, we had like 50, 60, 70 developers. So B2B projects were never really, for us, a decision, do we push other things back? We could still do pretty much everything on our roadmap. The interesting part was that with those partnerships and with, together with Sequoia, in the second year, we hired a new American CEO. The team moved more towards B2B.
Before that, you've been the CEO, or?
My co-founder and I, basically, we were co-founders, co-CEOs, co-everything, co-secretaries, everything.
Who raised this topic, hiring a local American-born CEO?
We saw that there is so much demand in the B2B side, and we knew we were not right for B2B. We knew we could basically keep running this as a B2C platform, but for the B2B, you need to be a different animal. You need to have corporate experience, otherwise the corporates don't really talk to you. They're just different. Entrepreneurs and corporate people, not a good match. In most cases, there's exceptions. So with that decision to bring in a B2B kind of CEO, he was with VeriSign before, and before that he was with Microsoft. The company became more and more B2B headed, and then the Series C round was with Intel and Deutsche Telekom, and that kind of tipped it more to the B2B. We had a great outcome. I cannot complain, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we would have put everything on the B2C card instead.
Was that an easy decision for you, that to let the decisions and being a CEO with your co-founder, let it go? As Mary said, giving a piece of your business to someone else, trusting them that they will make decisions. Of course, I assume you've been in the board as well?
Yeah, no, I've been in the board, and I still ran. I was head of product until we sold. For me, the thing was, at some point we had more than 100 people, and I know what I'm good at. I'm not a good running 100 people. I'm not. I'm really good with 5, 10, 15, 20 people. From there, weaknesses, come out that are not ideal, and when it's like 80, 100 people, I'm just not the right guy. And I was happy that we found someone who was the right guy. But still, the B2C, B2B thing is still a little bit in my head. But it's what it is.
If here are startup founders running a 5-10 people team and then being a CEO, when will they realize, or how should they realize that, as you said, I'm not good in running 100 people? Will they feel that I hate it? I hate, I don't know, reporting or going to management meetings, or how did you realize that? Or maybe the investors were saying that, hey, Roman, maybe you are not good in that.
I think it's a combination of that, and pretty much self-awareness is an important thing. I'm just not good at management, because management requires continuity. It requires to sit down with your reports every week. You need scorecards. You need to compare their goals with their results and so on. I'm bored. I cannot have a meeting with anyone every week. It kills me. My partner was really a techie, like a geek. The most famous people for him were not people. The most favorite people for him were not people; they were computers. And for us, it was okay. It was the logical next step to bring someone in. Also, because America is very different. Like before we got the CEO, we got attacked by a patent troll. It is something that is not known in Europe, but in America, you have law firms that have a bunch of floors full of people who screen patents that other people file, then have another floor of lawyers that are filing patents that are really close, and for a court almost impossible to differentiate from the other patents. And then they have 10 floors of people suing everyone who has a patent that is similar. And you have to understand that. I didn't understand it for a long time, and I'm still puzzling when I tell the story. So what happened was someone sued us. They sued Skype and Jajah, and they sued Reptel, and they sued everyone in the voice over IP space. And my partner, the geek, he said, well, we're not doing this. We're not infringing this patent. This is bollocks. We're going to give him a big kick in the butt. So, board meeting, we got a lawsuit, what we're going to do. The Sequoia said, well, we get Wilson Sonsini, and they're the best lawyers in the Valley. They will tell us what to do. So Wilson Sonsini is a most respected law firm. They sent one of their partners in, and guess what the partner said? The partner said, you're right. They don't infringe, you don't infringe any of these patents. But in our system, to prove that you're right will cost between $1 and $2 million. So we have to settle for $500,000 to $1 million, so you save half your money. And I'm like, can you repeat? So they told the same story again, and believe it or not, we paid $600,000 for settling on a patent infringement claim that we did not even touch remotely on. But it was a matter of 4 weeks, one wire transfer, and we were through it. And we were able to focus on our stuff. And the guy at Sequoia said, well, this is the cost of doing business in the US. I have more stories like that since I lived there for 10 years. This is one of the most memorable ones, and it happens. In America, it happens. So if you have a CEO that grew up in the American culture, you have someone to handle that, because I couldn't have done it a second time. It's really nerve-wracking. Just imagine what we could have done with this money.
Sure. Okay, there is a question from Norbert. What was your investor's contribution in the exit? Who was driving the exit?
So the exit was, I was driving the exit with our CEO and the guy from Sequoia. At that point, my partner was already building something else, so he left the operationally. He kind of went out a year before that. The Sequoia guy was the hard ass. That's just, you need a bad cop and a good cop. I'm always the good cop. I cannot remotely be a good bad cop, but I can be a pretty decent good cop. So the CEO was basically the operator. He gave them everything they wanted, and he wined and dined all the different decision makers. We sold to a public company, a gigantic public company. So the wining and dining was important, and the organization with the CFO to get them all the stuff for the due diligence and so on was important. And then in negotiations, I was the nice guy, and Sequoia was the bad cop. And the bad cop got us a better deal.
You mentioned that in 2006, your phone just rang and Sequoia was calling. Today it's not happening every time with the CE startup that from US investors are calling directly them. So because now the space is really crowded, and they are contacted every day by, I don't know, 300 ideas a day. So how to do a deal today with the US VC if you are a startup here in the CE?
Well, so I have to answer this. I have to go a little bit broader. So Sequoia's investment in Jajah was their first European investment in the history of their fund. Then I went to the US. I came back 10 years later. By the time I came back in 2016, they had 6 more. They had 7 investments in Europe in 10 years. That's not a very high rate. Excel had opened an office in Europe during that period. None of the other big VCs in the Silicon Valley framework have a structure in Europe. Some of them have a guy for Europe, but except for Excel, nobody has people here. Index is like a hybrid. They're US, English, British VC. But all the others, there's no Sequoia person in Europe, there's no Kleiner Perkins person in Europe, there's no Andreessen Horowitz person in Europe. One of the things that I learned over there is that you have to get in through the right door. And the right door is not the front door. You don't just walk in and present your business plan. Actually, some people at Sequoia will tell you the story that initially they started out with, don't try to find us, we find you. It's kind of changed because there's a lot more deals out there today than ever before, but they have their gatekeepers. And when I came back and I saw that they didn't have...
Very likely they will meet or talk to an analyst or something like that first.
It's less analysts, it's more like people from their network. It's people from their portfolio companies, it's people they've worked with before, it's investors in deals that they have funded and built a relationship with. And the gatekeepers are less like they're more the startup entrepreneur guys. The analysts are more like the banker guys, the operator guys. That's in most cases the gatekeepers are entrepreneurial people. And if you get in through the right gatekeeper, one of the things that the gatekeeper is supposed to do is the gatekeeper has to prep you. They should not send you in blindly. It's not good for them, it's not good for you. So in my situation after 10 years over there, I was puzzled by how little this happened in Europe on the US VC activity. I was amazed on the other hand by how much European startup land has improved. There is great entrepreneurial talent. They are better educated. They are more entrepreneurial than they've ever been. The new generation is just, they just dare to dream. They dare to go and do stuff. Like I think when I was at college, most people wanted to go to Deutsche Bank. They wanted to go to Volkswagen. The smartest people, right? Now the smartest people want to start something, and that's a generational thing. So I thought that someone has to build bridges, because on the other side of the ocean, in Silicon Valley, the magnetism of their setup is decreasing. In 2005, 2006, still, most of the people who were dreaming big went to Silicon Valley to present their idea. Through the right gatekeeper, through the wrong gatekeeper, doesn't matter, they went there because they thought this is where it all happens. Today, they don't have to go, and they know they don't have to go. The TransferWise guys never went there until Series C. The UiPath guys. The whole story is that you can build a great startup everywhere now. And if Sequoia and Kleiner and these people want to fund the best entrepreneurs, they have to open up their network of gatekeepers. And what we built with Capital300 is more or less an institutional gatekeeper. We scout Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the GSA region, and everything east of it into Ukraine and Russia and Armenia, everywhere in the Central European area for the best startups. We have a process where we present them to our partner VCs. Our partner VCs are all the names that I've mentioned. I don't have to mention them again. It's like presenting truffles on a silver plate. And if they like one and if they go into a deal, we go in on the deal at the same time, at the same terms. We always behave as a junior partner, so we do up to half of the round, so it would be equal, but in most cases we do 20, 30, 40% of the round, and they do 50, 60% because we want them to think of the deal as something that they put their entire weight behind. Because if what I went through with Jajah happens 10 times a year, 20 times a year, every year, Europe is going to become much stronger as startup land.
Agree. Well, actually, I think a year ago we had a small survey among Hungarian audience, and most of them said entrepreneurs that if they have the possibility, then they would choose such an investor who has an entrepreneur background. So after building companies, then
I would recommend only that approach. But unfortunately, most of European VCs do not have an entrepreneurial background. There's plenty good ones, but there's also a long list of people who've never run a company, never built a company, they've never had the pain. If they read Ben Horowitz's book about the hard things, they don't even know what he's writing about. That's the wrong VC.
Which is a good book, so very much recommended. Ben
Everybody
Horowitz,
should read this book, by the way.
Hard Things About Hard Things. Okay, Roman, thank you very much for your time. We will continue a bit later in the panel discussion. So thank you very much.